Good day and welcome to one of the first installments in Blue Turtle's YouTube channel. Today we're going to be looking at Ivanti Security Controls. My name's Ryan Martin and I'm the product manager for Ivanti here at Blue Turtle, and this will be the first installment where we're going to be walking you through the Ivanti Security Controls console. Okay, so what you're looking at the moment is the Ivanti Security Controls console. You can see down the side, we have icons to go to the configuration settings, and you can also use the drop down at the top to navigate through the settings. As I mentioned previously, Ivanti Security Controls is an on-premise patch and remediation solution from Ivanti. It has two components to it. It has Patch and Remediation Engine, as well as the ability to have the same agent perform application control functionality, and the allow and the deny of certain applications. So just for an overview of the console, I'm just going to walk through some of the configuration items, and again, just to give you a high level of what it looks like. So from here, from the home page, you can dive straight into functionality, and it's quite clearly laid out. What do you want to do? Do you want to do a new agentless operation? Do you want to view your machines in your environment? Would you like to import CVEs from a vulnerability scanner and load them into a patch group? So, whatever you're wanting to do, just, can click on that and it'll be followed through. Same on the application control side. You want to configure a new application control configuration. Do you want to edit an existing configuration, or do you want to have a look at the application control events? Up at the top here, we've got some useful links, and unfortunately it hasn't resolved properly, but it's how to get started, best practices, and then contacting Ivanti technical support. As you walk through the product and as you use the product, there'll be possible issues highlighted in the status section, and you can click on the hyperlink to drill down to view and resolve the surfaced issues. In the corner here, we just making sure that all the definitions that we're using remain up to date, and prior to each scan, it will also connect to content.ivanti.com and bring down the latest patch definitions. And as you can see from the definitions shown here, Ivanti Security Controls covers Windows as well as Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CentOS OS. And then there's rudimentary asset management in terms of discovering hardware asset management or software asset management items. And then Ivanti Security Controls also makes a function to enable the use of scripting on the endpoints. And as we go through some of that functionality, we'll go deeper into it. What you're seeing at here is just your patch levels or your patch health. So, as you deploy to more, and this is a small lab environment, so there's only a total of 2 devices, and we're only running Windows. And you can see, just in the last 50%, 50% of all machines have been assessed in the last 30 days. And obviously in the, lab environment, that's not as critical as, monitoring this in a production environment where there will be, multiple machines. And it's important to make sure that those machines are assessed continuously to make sure that you follow the practice of continual vulnerability management. Application control, also you can have a look to see what application control policies have been assigned to which devices. So this is by clicking on this, it will bring you to your machine groups. As I mentioned earlier, this can also be done via the drop down. But what the machine groups will allow you to do is, there's some default out of the box machine groups. For my machine being the Ivanti Security Control server, For my domain, if you're running in a Windows domain environment, it's possible to connect to your domain controller using Active Directory credentials, and then we can interrogate your domain controller, bring back the information with regards to the devices that the domain controller has reference to, and then perform a scan against the devices that Active Directory have presented to us. It's also possible to, configure your test items, so your test machines, so that you can have a group of machines, normally from different operating systems or different levels or with different applications, just so that you can, as a practice of patch management, just make sure that patches are rolled out correctly to your test devices before they get rolled out into the production environment. Scanning the entire network is also possible, and you can set this up to effectively sweep your entire network and try and discover devices that it finds using ICMP or ping sweep effectively. Your machine group, so this will differ from each user that logs in. So they'll have, their list of own machine groups that they can create, and creating a machine group as easy as, right-clicking new machine group, and we get taken to the actual window. And you would then enter the name of the machine group, set up the credentials, specify what you're actually going to, if it's specific for Windows, if it contains servers, domain controllers, print servers, SQL servers. You can specify machine groups by machine name. As mentioned earlier, it's also possible to include the domain, hosted virtual machines if you're running in a virtual environment and you've got actual guests running on a hosted virtual environment, or workstations, and then also setting up via IP range, IP subnet, and these can also be imported via an external source. That if there's a methodology that you have in your environment to continue updating the list of hosts to scan, that location of that file can be specified and it can be imported on a continual basis. It's also possible to scan a organizational unit within Active Directory, and using the credentials would be then possible to browse to your Active Directory to bring the OUs down, to be able to scan against them. And again, these are the nested groups that you see on the front page. So, very possible to configure the scanning multiple ways, as mentioned, and then also to set up your own individual groups for your own testing purposes, and for grouping of various devices. So this is what happens if we click on Home. We come back to the home page. Under New, we've got agentless operation, and one of the feature functionality of Ivanti Security Controls is to perform agentless scanning as well as agentless remediation of Windows endpoints. So you can set up the agentless operation by clicking here. We've drilled into the machine groups. We're going to go through and have a look at the agent policy. So while we can scan devices agentlessly, there are use cases where deploying an agent to a device would be beneficial, either for off-network devices or or devices that require specific schedules with regards to patch and remediation, and those agents can then be configured individually to meet whatever requirements you have. The favorite is just to group together you as the administrator, your favorite devices, patches, all of that. And as we go through the menus, and we're now looking at Windows patch, there's the possibility to set up and configure patch groups that contain various devices. You can set up a patch scan template. This would define how the actual product scans your environment and what it's actually going to scan for, or what it's going to be looking for, and you can put in exclusions and to specify that you want to exclude certain vendors or certain products. The deployment template will configure how the scans are actually then deployed, or how the vulnerabilities are then deployed to the devices. And there's various configurations that can be applied for servers, for workstations, for users connected, for off network devices. And then product level group, if there's products in your environment that actually have service packs, you can define what service packs should be the mandatory. If you work in a N-1 environment, you normally make sure that at least the N-1 service pack is applied to your SQL environments or products that run service packs. For Linux patch, very similar, patch groups, the patch templates, and the deployment template. The one thing that we don't do on the Linux side, just because it's not as prevalent in the Windows space, is the service packs and the patch levels. You'll see that's missing here. Application control configuration. So again, as mentioned, we can configure the agent to also act as to perform application control functionality, to make sure that only authorized applications are able to execute in your environment. And then, not so relevant in the South African market, but there's possibility to configure power state templates. I know in the EU and the US, there are green initiatives to make sure that we, as ICT, try to reduce electricity consumption. In South Africa, we're lucky to have electricity when we have it, and we haven't progressed to the maturity of using a product to maintain a certain power state in our enterprise environment. But there could be a use case with regards to a call center, or a environment that is only productive perhaps 12 hours of the 24, and then it possible to make sure that those devices are switched off when work finishes, and they don't just sit idle for another 12 hours, effectively wasting energy. I mentioned that we can do rudimentary asset scan, so we can detect the hardware as well as the software on a device. And the IT scripts template is scripts that security controls make available to perform workstation function, and we can go deeper into what those are as we go further into the product. So going again on these top windows under import, possible to import machine groups via CSV. If you have an export from an environment, we can bring those in and set them up actually as machine groups. The same for Windows patch group. CVEs. So if you're running a vulnerability scanner in your environment, and likes of Nessus, Qualys, Tanium, some of those, while they are very detailed at discovering the vulnerabilities in the environment, quite a few, or the majority of the vulnerability scanners, don't actually have the functionality to be able to execute and remediate on the correction of the vulnerabilities that they scan. So what they will produce, though, is a list of CVEs of the vulnerabilities that it found in the environment, and Ivanti Security Controls is able to import those CVEs, and we're able to overlay it on your environment. And where the vulnerabilities exist for operating systems and third-party patches, we're able to detect, use the CVEs and the information generated from there, and then able to actually remediate those vulnerabilities on the Windows as well as the third-party application side. There's quite a lot of history in Ivanti with regards to VMware, and Ivanti Security Controls also has some of its history in a product called Shavlik or Shavlik Protect. and Shavlik Protect at one stage was owned by VMware. So there's additional VMware functionality that Security Controls is able to have over and above any vulnerability or patch and remediation solution available. In that it understands the VMware environment, the likes of vCenter as well as ESXIs, and we're able to not only patch the ESXi host, but also there's functionality to patch offline VMs, because we understand the virtual infrastructure where those VMs reside, we can patch the guest as well as the hosts, and they can be in an offline state, which in a big large VMware virtual cluster, to make sure that your machines hit the production environments already fully patched and ready. It does have a large benefit in that space to ensure that continuous vulnerability assessment and protections happening in your environment. In the further series we'll have a look at the application control configuration and what's possible using the one agent to perform the patch management as well as application control. And just to caveat the application control, most products or most companies look at application control in a white sort of scenario, which is a whitelist where everything's whitelisted and everything's allowed, and everything's blacklisted and that's prohibited and not allowed. Works slightly different in that you don't have to manage and monitor and maintain a list of prohibited as well as allowed applications. But I'll get further into how Ivanti does that different to other solutions in the session where we cover application control in greater detail. From your view drop down at the windows, we can access various views of the actual home screen. So you can see we can chart here, we can have a look and we can see what machines. So from your home page we're very able to quickly change the view and have that adjusted to have a look at what the administrator is trying to look for and manage and this see when I click on machines, it'll list the machines on my environment, and by right-clicking machine, I've also got the option to connect via remote desktop protocol. This is using standard Windows RDP. There are applications from Ivanti that use their own proprietary form of remote desktop, but Ivanti Security Controls will connect to this device via RDP. A lot of administrators have remote desktop programs that they use, and the devices effectively get loaded. But what's nice about having the functionality in this tool is you're able to either connect an IP or the host name. You're also able to use or prompt for credentials as well as connect to an admin session should it be required. So we find a lot of administrators, the more they use the technology, the more they use to stay inside this window for normal IT related tasks like connecting to the machine, and we can power, restart, shut down. There's additional functionality that can be performed from this view home screen. You can see again I'll drop down and we can have a look at the results of the IT scripts. So you get the idea. The actual right side of your window can change, and you can actually see application control events, your operations monitor, that'll actually pop out, and your operations monitor has your deployment checker, your downloads, your agent command results, if you're running any agent installations in your environment, and then there's power tasks that can be all managed from the operations monitor. It's basically your window into what's happening in your environment, and you can update and refresh as necessary. Moving on away from the view to manage. So this is where the address book's managed. So for all email contacts, you can set up and create email contacts notifications of jobs, and successful notifications or failures. The credentials security controls are encrypted in the backend, which for an implementation is normally very useful, because what would happen is you would get the administrator to enter the actual credentials, the actual partner or the reseller implementing the service wouldn't actually ever see the credentials, so there's no risk for credential breach based on having to share those credentials out. Once those credentials are loaded, like I said, they're encrypted in the background, and the actual application can make use of those with regards to various functionality in terms of scanning or deploying to an endpoint. Database maintenance, again, one of the side effects, obviously, of all this amount of data that we're busy ingesting is that you do have to stay on top of your data management. And so there is database management, and you can schedule some of this management. You can also list how many results you would like to keep, and there's additional functionality for rebuilding indexes and backing up the database that can also be executed. The application control event in a large environment, these events can also accumulate quite quickly, so that there's also database maintenance that would be possible to make sure that these events are managed and monitored and maintained. If I mentioned IT scripts now a couple of times, and you can see as I click on it, we're just making sure that we're connecting to the Ivanti global subscription service, and we're making sure that we're getting the latest available scripts. And you can see the scripts that we have here are under various categories. So there's configuration, there's information, there's group policy, and there's a lot of functionality that can be used out of these scripts. And if you don't have a client management solution, Ivanti Security Controls can assist in doing rudimentary workstation management, set up a power plan, disable USB service, disable remote desktop. Some that would normally have to create scripts yourself, you can use these scripts. We can also import scripts. So if you've got administrators that are have scripts that they run in your environment, we can import them, and then we can then have them here, and when they're imported, they'll then be monitored and audited and maintained. So you at least have a central point of configuration for the scripts that your administrators use in your environment. Users, we're able to connect to Active Directory to bring your users in. But again, we can also create rules, and it's role-based access. So, there's various functionality that you can allow to certain users and also prevent to others based on the role that they've been assigned. Custom patches. So again, if there's a additional maybe a bespoke that requires patch management, we can also import some of the more custom information with regards to some of the other applications in environment to manage those going forward. The scheduled console tasks. So again, we connect to the window. It doesn't run its its own scheduler, but it's actually then set to you can set up the credentials to make sure that your scans are operating properly. If you've got scheduled the local patch deployments, we can manage these and maintain and monitor them from there. Clicking first of all search your machine groups, edit your console description, your console alias editor. So again just console related stuff, but this is where we're also able to create a report and schedule the report. And if I click on create report, you'll see that there's a couple out of the box reports with regards to patch management, as well as inventory and asset management, and these using the actual can also be scheduled on a weekly, daily, monthly basis as required. Your custom patch editor, as highlighted earlier, will be able to, open an existing custom XML and, be able to then, add, effectively patches or products to that, and again, allow a more custom, bespoke functionality should it be required. Just a caveat, most of our clients don't, go as far as this, and is done on a Windows and a third-party operating system applications. Again, here we can run the IT scripts. We can compare application control configurations in case you've got a case where there's certain expected behavior, or there's a behavior that's not as expected. We can compare those application control configurations to highlight, what the differences are. You can see that we're auto updating our definitions just to make sure that with the latest and greatest. So under tools, if you click options, this will detail the options for this Ivanti Security Controls, and there's quite a lot of extensive configuration that can happen. Some of the points to make note of is where are you going to store your patches? So where does this directory reside in your environment? To set up email notification if necessary. If you would like to have a distributed environment, or if you have a distributed environment, to set up remote locations for the download and distribution of patch content, so that not everything's coming across the WAN, but actually could effectively be local to a remote site. We can actually set that up, and then the content is synced across the various distribution servers. And one of the key features I want to just highlight before we end up wrapping up the session is that Ivanti Security Controls have what do we call a cloud sync server, and it's possible to set up a software as a service cloud sync server from Ivanti. And what this will do is it will actually allow you, using the agent, and I mentioned that there's certain times when an agent is required, using an agent to actually communicate to the SaaS service. So Ivanti will host the service, and what it means is that all your off-network devices won't have to communicate to the cloud server, or you won't have to punch holes in your firewall, and you won't have to expose security risks, so that off-network devices can communicate to your on-premise console. Ivanti actually make a gateway available, and these consoles that you register here will be able to facilitate the communication of off-network agent information to your console server on site. So very very great feature that came out of the Shavlik Protect times. Logging, how are we going to log if you run an internet proxy? IT scripts if there's special requirements there, and if you are executing REST API commands from a remote machine, it's also possible to interrogate Ivanti Security Controls and get bidirectionally receive and get information. So last little bit that I want to touch on is under the help. This is just where you would enter your security keys to make sure you check your program for updates, refresh files. So you saw me doing that in the beginning, just to make sure your definitions are up to date. Help, again, wouldn't be help without how-to tutorials, as well as our online help. And then again, if there is feature functionality that's perhaps missing, we're able to submit a feature request. We can contact Ivanti technical support directly. And again, about tell you your file versions, your application version, and also highlight the patents that are actually Ivanti have hosted and protected in this environment. So that's all that I wanted to cover for today as a console overview. In some of the upcoming sessions, we'll dive deeper into actual patch management and what that looks like. And we'll go, to make sure that we, cover the detail of what's possible with patch management. And in the session following that, we'll have a look at Ivanti Security Controls and how we do application control differently, and how we can use the application control functionality to prevent zero-day and ransomware incidents within your environment seamlessly and easily. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the session. Please join us for a following up session where we're going to be diving deeper into the product functionality and going into the Windows patching. And in the third part to the series, we'll be looking at the application control. Thank you so much for your time and look forward to seeing you again.